Welcome for this first seminar in summer term, and I'm very happy we have here our local people, and more than that, maybe you know that we will organize, that's in a broad sense, organize a summer school in Prague in summer, and so I think that it will be a good occasion for the organizers to learn how to organize a summer school. So thank you very much for offering this talk, and it's your turn now.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. I would like to compare this summer school with the one that's upcoming in this summer. So in the summer, it will be the 2-week ESLI, European Summer School of Linguistic Logic and Education that local organizer of is Dusan Variš. So that's a much bigger event than the one that we ran. And this was also a closed event. It was kind of by invitation or by request of the Directorate General for Translation. But anyway, it was a very interesting experience for us, and we also took it as an opportunity to actually, or at least I took it as an opportunity to force myself to actually start using LLMs, because I don't trust them for many good reasons. You probably know the reasons from all my mentions. So I said, well, everybody is willing to use them. I need to try that as well. And the best way of learning things is to teach them. So that's what we did. So here is an overview of the talk today. I'll briefly describe who are DGT, Directorate General for Translation. And also I'll just mention some past collaboration that our department had with them. Then I'll describe what does it mean to organize a summer school a la carte or by request from someone, because I think that part of our kind of duties could definitely include popularization and also popularization at like a mid technical level. So not just the plain popularization, but also popularization among colleagues who are regularly working with language processing tools, language service providers, and so on. So this is something that you could mimic for whoever. There are many companies who are in the university partnership program, for example. So I can imagine that it would be very useful to spread our knowledge and our experience through this network. So if anybody is willing, it's very easy to ask someone, would you like a seminar? And of course, they will like to get a seminar. So this was the other way around. We were asked, we were approached by, I think that's it can work either way. And then we'll talk about 3 projects. So I'll be talking about multilingual translation consistency checks. This is all through LLMs. Zdeněk will talk about error span annotation, and Tomáš Polák will talk about clear writing and style and domain adaptation, again, fully automatically or as much automatically as possible with LLMs. And what didn't fit into the talk today are the 3 remaining projects. So there were in total 6 of us running this summer school for the 40 plus participants at DGT. And that was Dominik Macháček, detecting grammatical errors and typos across multiple languages, if I'm not mistaken. Josef Jon was doing terminological consistency checks, and Miroslav Hrabal was providing kind of tooling for that. So automatic prompt optimization using a framework DSpy, which you may know. So first, Director General for Translation. The information in these slides comes from something which I found in Poland. So this is hopefully fully public information. It was publicly accessible on the web. So Director General for Translation is one of the executive departments of the European Commission, which is the government of the European Union. And technically, it is one of the largest public translation service providers. And it's also like the domain leader, that this is from their webpage, of all translation work related to the European Commission. So it works mainly on 3 pillars. Again, that's from the homepage of the DGT. They are, of course, providing high quality translation. They are offering editing services to help producers which is all the departments in the European Commission, to produce clear texts. And they are also delivering AI-based multilingual services. And the first of them and the most famous of them is e-translation. So I'm not going to advertise for e-translation in any way, but it's already a decade maybe that this e-translation service under different names was available, and it's technically provided to all European institutions. I don't know if anybody ever takes that, but technically we don't, if we are lazy and if we just want something automatically translated, we don't have to ship it to Google. We can also use e-translation. And e-translation is, of course, best tuned for the European legalese because it's on their data. And DGT also promotes multilingualism and supports language professions. So there are lots of linguists, both theoretical and primarily practical, those who are editing text at very skilled level, working at DGT. Yeah, so this is out of this presentation. I think it's quite interesting to realize that it's 2 slides, that the set of languages which are most spoken, I don't know what exactly most spoken means. It's probably the highest number of speakers of that language. How this is related to the presence of the languages in the internet. So English is probably spoken by 1.5 billion people. Mandarin Chinese is the second one, or 1 billion. Then Hindi, 600, that's too complex. And Spanish, Standard Arabic, French, Bengali, Portuguese, Russian, Indonesian. So this is the, I don't know the source of the statistics, but we would not be surprised by this. This is the presence on the internet. Top 10 most used languages online. English is, the proportion of English is much bigger compared to the rest. And then for some reason, there is not the Chinese. Obviously, the statistics are skewed, but Spanish, German, Japanese, Russian, French, Italian, and lots of other languages. So the dominance of English in the online world, even if we ignore the flaw of the statistics, not mentioning Chinese, is very big. Like we, and everybody is helping to that, including this talk, of course. Yeah. Okay, these are the EU languages, so it's just a refresher for the members or the citizens of the Czech Republic that we joined the European Union in 2004, and there were 2 more joins after us, Romanian, Irish, Bulgarian in 2007, and Croatian in 2013. Wasn't there anything newer? I'm not sure. Yeah. So anyway, there is a colorful set of languages and language families, and they are all under the one hood of the European Union. And there is actually a legal basis for this multilingual support. So there is the Treaty of Functioning of the European Union, and the treaty says citizens have a right to address the official EU bodies in any of the EU's official languages and to receive a reply in that language. And there is a council regulation that says that all the documents shall be drafted in all the official languages. So the language should not be any barrier in the European Union. And it doesn't even tell you that you, as a citizen of one country, should be allowed to access the language in your country's official language. You can choose any. So it's more inclusive than just allowing the Czechs from the Czech Republic to receive it in Czech. It can be also Germans from anywhere asking for a Greek version of something. Yeah. These are the EU institutions, and of course all the EU institutions have a group of people who work on producing high quality texts. So I'm not going to discuss any of these, but you know the European Commission and European Parliament who are interpreting the speeches of the Parliament regularly. So this is a great source of spoken language data. I'm not familiar with the Council of the European Union in any data perspective, but European Commission provides us with text, us computational linguists, and European Parliament provides us with speech in all the languages. So this is very good resources. This is DGT as the department. In 2024, there were close to 2,000 people employed by this single unit, which is a lot. close to half is in Brussels, and 55, more than half is located in Luxembourg, which is also where we ran the school, and 2% are across the EU. And actually, the participants in our summer school were from various places. So many of them came from Brussels, but I think there are also some of them who came from quite far away. And 70% of this staff is those who kind of work with the text, and their duty is to produce the good quality text, and 30% is the support for this. So the main output of DGT are the texts, and 70% of their staff is working on that. This is the volume. So it's in pages, as translators like to count materials in pages. It's 2 million pages in 2024. That's the output. And 70% of that is produced by the people that I just mentioned. 30% is outsourced by some other agency. So it is a big language service provider or translation agency. And this is the translation output across the year. So we have more than 2 million in the last year. And you see that the number is slowly rising, not much, but the number of staff is slowly decreasing. So they are not getting as optimized as one could think. But definitely there is this tendency that a little bit of fewer people can manage to produce a little bit of more output, hopefully without sacrificing quality. And I think that's the key point, of course, here, so that they do not sacrifice quality in any way. And that's maybe why we do not see some sharp drop, which is good. Okay, yeah. Language of original documents is English, so they're translating primarily from English into different languages. And these are the outputs. So French is the biggest target, but you see kind of even distribution for the rest. The German is also slightly promoted, and then it's 4% or 3% across the remaining EU languages. So there is this I don't know, this nivelization, the same level of output is clearly visible here. So all the languages are treated equally as equally important. These are the tools and products they offer. So full-length translation, web translation, then there is this e-translation, which I already mentioned, and then other tools like web editing and drafting, Corrigenda, which are corrections of the European legal documents. They have other AI-based services. We didn't really use them much, but this is front end to large language models they run in-house or they pay for so that it's closed and the data doesn't leak from the EU. And one of those is, for example, summarization or some automatic reply. These are essentially sets of pre-processing steps and prompts tailored for each of the tasks, and then the model processes it in-house, and then you can use it. And the connection with our department and DGT is through this e-translation, because you may remember the project Euromatrix 2006 till 2009, and then 2 more follow-up projects. One of these projects also had Andreas Eisele, a colleague, on board. And this guy later, after finishing his work in the EU projects, went to the DGT, worked as in-house person in DGT, and set up the previous version under a different name. But that was the first translation service run by the Commission. So if we take it broadly, the EU projects in this case have exactly delivered what the EU has asked for, because in the projects there were developed the tools. There was Moses phrase-based translation system, and that was adopted by a very important department of the European Commission. So this is our connection there, and now all these tools are moving to be based on some large language models, but the quality does have to be maintained, so that has to work reliably. So now let me briefly talk about this summer school. Last year in February, Jan Hajic was contacted by our past colleague. This past colleague also knew us because he attended a number of empty marathons in the past. And in March, we actually decided that yes, we will try to run this school for the DGT. In April, we started to negotiate what will be our presentations, what will be our lectures, and what will be interactive with the participants. In May, we started to go official, and we fixed the date. It was at the end of September. In June, there has to be some paperwork done, so some official agreement was initiated. And at that point, DGT discovered that they actually have to go through an agent, so a Luxembourgish company which has to provide the school. But it was all negotiated with us already. So the interesting situation was that we were talking directly to them, but officially it had to go through an agent in the middle. So it caused some surprise, but not too much. And officially, end of June, our program was approved. So this was the program: 3 lectures in the morning, and then work on the project, right? And there were 6 projects, and you will hear some of those. So then there started to be some hurdles in this preparation. So in July, we started to book our flights, and that reopened the price question. And then it ended up that the intermediate company is somehow capping the budget. So the DGT cannot give us as much as we have calculated our costs to be. So in the end, some of the colleagues actually were subsidized from their research grant project, and their visit there was contributing to the grants by working with the EU data. So the summer school was not, and that's the key point, was not just that we were presenting, but it was also that we were looking at the particular use case, and this use case was the feedback important for the project. In August, the agreement was actually signed. Again, the company had some boilerplate text, and we noticed, for example, that if we signed that boilerplate text without looking at it, all our lectures would be exclusive to the company from now on, right? So that was something that we caught, and we didn't, of course, agree to. The company said, okay, that's just a boilerplate, let's leave that out. But please do read the agreements, do read the fine print, because there are often some statements which are nobody really wants, but they are there, and you can run into big troubles if you sign something without looking at it. So in September, we were fully involved in preparation for the slides and so on. The day before, on Sunday noon, our flight was canceled, and that was while 3 of us were on the bus or train to the airport. Then later in the afternoon, we found out that actually the agreement had some harsh penalties for delays of our appearance and or no-shows. This is understandable because there were close to 50 people coming, and if we were late, there would be those close to 60 people just waiting for us. So it makes sense. So I'm very grateful that the colleagues were adventurous enough and similar as I was. So at 4 a.m. On the day when we were supposed to start, we arrived at the hotel by a combination of trains and buses. And we were jet lagged without the flight, but we managed to start the school and run it successfully. So that was some of the hurdles. So a warning is that if you are running something not on your premises, the logistics can really become a nightmare, and it can become a nightmare on the last second. Like, you never expect that a flight would be canceled. We actually, normally we are used to coming to going to conferences on the day in the morning. Like, it's close. Luxembourg is not so far. So you just hop on the plane at 6 a.m. and you are there, and at 10 you're presenting, right? But if you are responsible, if you're not just a participant or not just a single person, if you are running that event, you have to be more cautious. We were more cautious. We had our flight in the afternoon the day before, and still it was canceled, and it was some major problem. Like, there were no other flights available so there were, I don't know if it was like a hacker's attack on several EU airports. So yeah, then luckily it was close enough that we couldn't make it on foot or by bike, but we made it in various other ways. Okay, so now let's move on to the project that I'm going to present as the multilingual translation equivalence checks. So the original goal was to double check that there is a terminological consistency between all the 24 official versions of the document. So the example that we were given up front is that the UK entity used in anywhere in text can mean different things. It can be an entity residing in the UK, but it also, in the different languages, could be translated as entity physically present in the UK and not elsewhere, entity following the UK legislation, even if it's located whatever in Prague, or entity with any link to the United Kingdom. Of course, this example mentioning UK is still before Brexit, yeah. So you see that there are different meanings behind the words, but the meanings have to be rendered the same way, or should be rendered the same way in all the documents, because they are treated as equivalent. You can be like, when there is some court dispute, any of these versions should work the same way. Another very famous example is that the committee reports to the commission. So does the committee send reports, or is it subordinate to the commission? Again, this is a different thing. Yeah. So the 23 translators working independently into all the target languages actually bring a high risk that they will understand the text differently. So that's the motivation for the project. Can we make sure that there is correct or unified understanding of the original text? So what we did in the project, we tested LLMs for some analysis, and we tested LLMs for multilingual syntactic analysis comparison. So can it spot differences across parses? And we also tested LLMs for spotting translation divergences. So I'll go over these. The core agenda. So the EU is regularly producing lots of documents, and some of these documents have a special status. They are corrections of the previous documents, and these corrections, of course, take some time, and they fix things which do not. Well, I don't know the exact process, but I think that they simply fix things which were created by accident, and everybody agrees that it should have been worded differently. It's not that there is different opinions, but core agendas should be the technical things where some like error happened in the process, but the main idea remains unchanged. That's my understanding. So these core agenda, or well, maybe there are core agendas of different types, but we definitely focus on the core agendas which only do these technical changes. So we were looking for the core agenda. They are published as PDF documents. We looked for the core agenda which correct the wording somewhere. And we wanted to analyze them globally because they contain errors which should be avoided in the future. So there should never be a corrigendum for something which was like already corrected. So we downloaded all the or HTMLs, converted them to plain text, and we were simply searching, and these corrigendas are produced in different subsets of the languages. So some of them are produced only in German and Spanish. Some are all the EU languages at once. So you need to grab for all variations of these wordings. And then from that, we wanted to extract the types of errors that were there. So here is an example, and yeah, I'll go over this in quite some detail. So this is a particle number of the document, and it's a corrigendum for some, which is listed above, some regulation. And the corrigendum says that the wording should be changed as follows: for member states shall authorize the movement of equidae registered in their territory, something, into member states shall authorize the movement of registered equidae in their territory. So first of all, if you didn't know who are equidae, that's all the equidae, right? all the horses and zebras. And now it's not surprising that we, as a member state of the European Union, the Czech Republic, would not be authorizing the movement of equidae such as this donkey outside of our space, right, of the space of the Czech Republic. So definitely we are going to regulate the movement of the equidae which are in the Czech Republic. But now there is some difference. Either it's equidae registered in their territory, or it's registered equidae in their territory. So this is something that syntacticians here would love to see, the ambiguity of the attachment. It took me quite some while to draw this, and if the analysis is wrong, then please correct me. But my understanding is that it goes about this German registered zebra, right? So it is an equidea, it is registered, it was registered in Germany, now it's in the Czech Republic, and the question is whether its movement should be, this is also the Czech Republic, whether its movement should be approved or authorized by the Czech government, as in there, that's the same zebra, or whether the movement is not to be authorized, it's free to move. So if it's this wording, equidea registered in the territory, then I understand it as the Czech government authorizing the movement only of the equidea who were registered in the Czech Republic. If it's this wording, it's a registered equidea in our territory, which is kind of not necessary to say because we are approving only the movement of the equidea in our territory anyway, but it's registered equidea, registered anywhere, then we also limit the movement of the German zebra, right? So this is a very small example how a simple swap introduces or prevents some ambiguous reading, and it has an implication. Imagine that you were riding this German zebra in the Czech Republic, and suddenly you were approached by a policeman and said, "Is the movement of your zebra approved?" And you said, "Well, I looked at the at the wording and I said that you're not my zebra is not registered in the Czech Republic. I can do whatever I want with that, right?" Okay, so we were searching for this automatically, and this is from a colleague in the group. He has selected some large language models. He has also used Llama 3.3 and asked about this difference, because if you have this list of differences is something which we created in large volumes very easily from the Corrigenda, but then you need to process it. So the question is, can LLMs be used to find the differences in the meaning? Based on this very small experiment, the colleague said that Llama understands the difference very well. I corrected it to somewhat because it reads very well. It spots the difference, but I don't think it draws the right conclusions, but because I've already described what is my conclusion. So it says that one of the sentences explicitly stated the registration is in their territory, directly modifying equidea through participle phrase, and the other wording introduces ambiguity with in their territory. It could either describe whether the equidea are registered, where the equidea are registered, or where the movement of this equidea occurs. The attachment of in their territory to either registered equidea or the movement changes the interpretation. If in the territory is attached to registered equidea, it specifies the location of the registration. I'm not sure. Registered equidea in their territory. They say that the second, so Llama says that the second version specifies the location of the registration. I don't quite agree with this. If attached to the movement, then of course it describes where the movement takes place. So the question is whether this wording is ambiguous, and the in their territory can be attached both to movement or the registration, whereas this is unambiguous and the in their territory is attached only to the registration, which is probably correct. I invite you to object. But anyway, it is able to spot the ambiguity in some way. We may not agree with the understanding, with the analysis, but it is possible to get at least a warning about some mismatch. Yeah. So so this was like an example that a colleague has looked at in close detail. What I did was a different thing. I ran it through the locally run GPT OSS model with the DSPY framework, and I automatically processed 6,000 items with two set of prompts, or two variants of the prompts. I manually constructed a set of classes of what changes are happening. So the corrigenda are correcting some things, and I was curious what is the distribution of phenomena that the corrigenda were correcting across the languages. And technically, I was asked either first describing I was first asking the instruction like, please classify, and then saying the list of classes, or I was first listing the classes and then asking, please classify into the classes that you just saw. So this difference in wordings actually leads to quite some difference in the outcome. So the agreement of the very same model with itself is not perfect. It's far from perfect. It's only 80% landed in the same class. But anyway, if, for example, you are like curious to see what is the most frequent phenomenon, you will get it, right? Because either way, including the errors or mismatches, you will the statistics will work out if the number of items is big enough. So out of curiosity, most of these changes are changed in the document or reference ID. So these are purely technical corrections. Then some lexical refinement, and one could again go deeper into these 1,000 items. Refinement in time specification. So obviously, we could again list the exact things, but obviously something is like translated differently, and different member states happen to run things at different paces, for example. Semantics, some change in mentioned entities or institutions, change in number or quantity. It does happen that whatever, a dose of a drug is 10 times higher allowed in some of the countries just by accident, just by misplacement of the comma, and so on. Some typos. By the way, the syntax, the PP attachment is extremely like further down on the list. So the Equidea example is something which we spotted right away. It was like not cherry-picked, it was the first one, but it's not too frequent across the set of changes. LLMs doing syntactic analysis. I'm taking too much time. I'll try to be faster. So LLMs doing syntactic analysis. So our first experiment was, this is again the Equidea, right? If LLMs are able to do the syntactic analysis in parallel in many languages. So first of all, can LLMs deliver syntactic analysis at some reasonable output quality? And can they do it in all the EU languages? And can they do it in parallel when we ask for the syntactic analysis at once for a number of items? And specifically, I was searching for the cases. So this is the set of the sentences I'm demonstrating only 5 languages here. There is the 24 in total, and I'm asking the LLM with some prompt, which set of languages render the meaning with the ambiguity the same way, and which set of languages render it unambiguously in another way. And if you read this carefully, you will notice that us and the German legislations actually restrict the movement of the German zebra, whereas English, French, and Slovak allows for the more relaxed movement of the zebras, and that's because of the ambiguity and the placement. So this is my golden truth from analyzing these examples. And then I asked GPT with the exact same prompt. I ran it 3 times. So I asked it something like, do the syntactic analysis in these 5 languages and summarize which of them have the 3 fully parallel across the languages. And each of the runs, and that's the interesting thing, it uses a different notation for the dependency parses. So this one uses, I don't know the frameworks, but it like uses brackets and arrows, and this is format used by some parser, some dependency parser. I don't know if Stanford dependencies or UD or whatever. This one lists the nodes and their governors. So of course, there are multiple ways in which you can linearize dependency trees. It happens that the same model run just 3 times jumps to different ways of linearization of the dependency tree. And also based on that, it actually arrives at different conclusions. So this is kind of a warning. If people ask LLMs to do very complex stuff, it can do the complex stuff, but for some reason it chooses different formalizations of that complex stuff. And by that choice, it also makes different errors in the analysis and arrives at different conclusions. So I would not say that this is an evidence of reliable behavior. Like, this is not something that we would like to see. But if you know nothing about dependency analysis, then you will not notice that these are different styles. They are styles. We could actually, I think the analysis are identical as far as I look at the edge labels and the words. So it can be equivalent, but it's still, if you are, for example, processing this and you would like to draw a tree based on that, you would have to develop different parsers of these different outputs. So LLM is a beast which can do everything for you. Its output will vary and demonstrate the same variability as the input is showing, and that's risky. Okay, so I think that I'll skip more on this because there is something about auctions and buying something on a semi-annual basis, and again, it differs, right, based on the runs. So the main observation by the colleague is that if the prompt mentions a specific style of syntactic hierarchy structure, such as the UD, then it constrains the output more, and then you get some more reliability, some less variance in the LLM output. Of course, the question is, if you ask for something which is not as prominent as the UD style, if you ask for something which is not so well present in the internet, the quality of the parsers itself may degrade just because you have chosen a bad formalization of the output. And of course, I know that this was like parse everything in strict isolation from the other languages, so that your parsing in one language is not affected by your parsing in the other language. This is some blah blah. Like, it doesn't mean anything to the LLM. It gives us a good feeling, and it influences the output in some positive way in this example. So, being more specific is helpful. Okay. So that was syntactic analysis, and now spotting translation divergences. I'll probably skip these examples because this is again by, okay. So there are things where the different languages make the different translation errors. So for example, most of languages here talk about a direction which is south-south east, south-southeast. But the English wording was south-southwest direction. So the different languages, for some reason, misunderstood or mistranslated the direction of the cultivating vines, right? So it's now, of course, I don't know which is the correct direction of placing the wineries on a hill, probably, but it's interesting to see if LLMs can spot these differences. This is the analysis GPT-5. It actually managed to identify the differences. So you just threw in the data and it located the semantic mismatches. This was more on syntactic translations, and here the colleague says it's syntactic, but it's actually the example with the reporting, such as being subordinate or presenting reports. I think that in this sentence, it is the being subordinate, meaning the committee reports to the commission and its members are nominated by the commission from highly qualified personnel and so on. So I think it's being subordinate. all the translations here talk about bringing the report to the commission, and again, this was like correctly extracted as differences with some simple prompt. And I did a larger study that I downloaded 7 versions, English and 7 other languages. So I had 8 parallel segments. I had 195,000 of those. And then I subsampled that. And I was searching for a set of languages which diverged from the English and a final verdict. So this is something which would be very tedious for a human. Like you download 200,000 segments. Each segment is 8 parallel in the 8 languages, and you would like to spot the differences in the translations. So in the end, I was able to run only 4,000 overnight, but still 4,000 8 parallel text overnight is something which no human could do. And I was searching with 2 different prompts. One was a simple prompt, so given several language versions of a text, identify semantic errors between the versions, restrict your output to concrete errors, omitting nuance differences. This crazy word. The language versions are delimited by a line containing double dash. And then the complex was actually highlighting that it should create internally a syntactic parse and write a conclusion. So it was more, it was then asking about the translations are semantically equivalent, but it was expected to follow the syntax which is kind of implied by the, it was expected to follow the semantics or identify errors in semantics, which is inspired by the syntax. So it was the syntactician's view of semantics to constrain the search. And I did 3 small runs with each of these prompts and 1 big run with the 4,000 items with just one of the prompts. So the different runs in the simple prompt, there were no differences in the 3 runs. In the complex prompt, yes, there were quite some differences. And looking at the 4,000 items, there was 61% of agreement between the simple and the complex runs. So again, the stability is not good. It's only more than half, but still, I think that if we look at the major diffs or things like that, this is a good shortlisting, right? So this is if you as a human don't have to spend weeks reading that material. You can overnight get some prioritization. There will be errors in the prioritization, but you can still go over that. And colleagues, as linguists, manually verified a small subset of this. So out of 61 items, they said that they agree with the judgment of the LLM in 70% of cases. 72% was the precision. So that's not too bad. It's there are false positives, but it's better than chance, definitely. So conclusion from this part is that the core agenda are good for inspiration, but actually the internal notes are more useful, and we didn't find much useful things in the core agenda. They have some internal notes that work better, and there are also many checkers implemented in their particular tool they use for translation. So the core agenda are not informing us much. The models seem to be able to reliably parse many languages. We tried up to 9 languages at once and identify differences when they are asked to treat each of them separately. Otherwise, they lump it all together. So this somewhat helps. And they are able to spot translation divergences in 8 tuples of languages with this precision of 72%. So that's definitely useful for data cleaning. And then technically, yes, it was just nice and quickly it worked. We had just the 3 days of the school, and I started with DSpy on the first day myself. So it's something that you really should try. With that, let me hand the presenter to Zdeněk. And Zdeněk will talk about error span annotation.
So I just want to show you a bit more how it goes when you are invited to organize an event like this, when you haven't organized anything like this before, and you have no idea. You are invited to have a project, like one of the six projects for people from the European Commission or from the DGT. It quickly became clear that we will be probably 6 people. Each of us will have one of the projects. Okay, you are organizing a project for 6 days, but for 3 days. But what would be useful to these people? What would be also useful to you, or what you can bring as a researcher, so that these people that we knew nothing about before we really came there want to know. It was an iterative process. We went on through a series of calls. We saw some of the directors or people guiding the team. We have not talked to the individual translators. So I had some rough idea, and I came from the research perspective. I knew what the topic I was working on at that time, which was the error span annotation. So if you have a source text and you have a target text, so the goal is to mark the spans in the source text, in the target text, which were somehow mistranslated. I knew how the process goes, and I also had at the time the web annotation app, which we were using for the experiment. So my idea was, well, let's use this annotation app. We have this app. You have some data, or they have some data that they can provide, and we can analyze those data. It didn't quite go this way. Because when we actually sat down with the people that sign up for my project, we found out that some of them are really translators, like full-time translators with no really interest in LLMs or research or experimenting. They work with the Trados Studio, which is their official set of tools that they upload the document in, and then they translate it, and the output is a translated document. And to make the things we work with useful for these people, we are actually focusing on making a plugin into this Trados Studio to make something they can actually use. But eventually, we also got to some minor experimental evaluation. So I will be pretty quick. I know we don't have much time, but they already had some AI assistant plugin in the Trados Studio, and the goal was to make it find translation errors. So there were some built-in prompts. I will have the screenshot later on. And their original purpose was to help with the translation itself. So they had the original sentence. Yeah, maybe you can see it here better. What is later here? Yeah. So they had the original sentence, and they could use this AI assistant, which was actually connected to some LLMs, to produce a translation. But that wasn't what we wanted. We actually wanted to make to tweak this plugin to make it find the errors in the translation once they already translated it. So we started with a custom prompt, and then we're running into various technicalities. For example, because we needed to use the models they were using on premise and not the official API. And yeah, we needed to tweak the plugins. You have these cool ideas, which kind of experiments you will try, and in the end, you spend a lot of time really going through the software you've never seen before, and trying to get over some technical difficulties. So we had to do some tweaks like disable caching and actually include the target segments that wasn't turned on by default. And we were surprised that the models were clueless about the errors because they have not actually seen the target translation, because the original purpose was to create the target translation. And we were tweaking with some more settings. There was luckily one person that was very able to help with all these technicalities, but there are also some pure translators, one translator between English Maltese, one between English Spanish. So we ran some case studies, or we were actually focusing on specific examples in those language pairs, because they were able to tell us whether the model has spotted the errors correctly or not. we started with some default prompt where there were some troubles, mostly because the LLM tried too hard to find errors, so it was finding errors basically at every pair of sentences, because there was no other option than actually to run it iteratively on each pair of sentences in their software. There was like the limitation of the software, and once we prompt the model to find the errors, it will find the errors. So then we added some tweaks, like there may be no errors in the text, and or like most of the translations are correct, which helped in this respect, but then we had lower recall, so there were some trade-offs, and we had to do some tweakings. And we eventually got to the experiments as well, very quick ones, because we had like 1 day left for doing that. But we had some data from DGT, and we actually used the web annotation tool, or the annotation tool I was talking about, which is not the web annotation, just the web annotation tool, but it can also be connected to some LLMs. And so I was curious whether if we run an LLM on their data, whether the errors it will find will match the errors they have manually annotated in their data. So we again picked the GPT-OSS 120B because it was like the strongest open model that we had available at that time. We tried to kind of copy their guidelines they had for their translators, or they had when they were finding the errors, and trying to copy these guidelines also to the LLMs. Again, some overnight experiments. And I think like the most interesting finding, which arise from these experiments, was that here we were able to choose whether we want to translate sentence by sentence, or paragraph by paragraph, or rather like chunk of 10 sentences, clusters of 10 sentences together, or if we want to translate the whole document. And well, guess what happened? If we translated the whole document at once, the model found only 13 terminology errors, while when we were choosing the segments of 10 sentences, it found around 300. And if we were translating sentence by sentence, it found almost 800 errors. Maybe you are curious how it was with the ground truth. So these are the numbers of errors that human found, and you see they are rather low, or they are rather matching some larger segments. Yeah, some more statistics when it comes to human and model evaluation, but the length of the segments mattered a lot, and the error categories were not really matching. We would like to have the diagonal here, which you see is not really the case. And the precision, both precision and recall, were essentially pretty low. You can see how it looks like when we plot it or visualize these two side by side. So this is their official, can I say corrigenda in this case as well? It's just like their manually annotated errors in the translation. This is the source, and this is what the model that we prompted for finding the errors found. You see the colors don't match, the spans don't match, but we are looking into what the model found. And in some cases, it did not make real sense. I'm not that sure what is here. Inspekce kontrola a vymáhání příjmů. And příjmu is only attached to the last item, which is not really the case here. It just like, I would say, is attached to all three of these. There's really no error. Sometimes what the model found was correct. So, or it at least made sense. There is abbreviation here, which is left out in the translation. So we are trying to give them some recommendations which models they should use if they want to actually use it in the future. They had some private access to the OpenAI models, so they could try the ones they had available through OpenAI API, but we recommended the GPT-OSS as a large reasoning model. And I guess the big takeaway, or there are like two big takeaways. I have three here. What is, okay, three big takeaways. Prompting matters, size of the document matters, and the LLMs are not ready to replace the human revisers yet, but there can be used as some auxiliary tool. And with that, I would pass the mic to Tomáš.
So my group was working on topic optimizing from prompts for clear writing, specific style, and domain. So we are in legal domain mostly. So the text that we worked on is the AI Act, very heavy legal text. And the main idea is that we need to work on something called legalese, which is the burden of incomprehensibility that can be easily removed, hopefully, from the legal text by applying plain language changes. So essentially, legalese expects the reader to adapt to the text. So the text can be convoluted, can contain lots of very precise definitions and embedded clauses, things that are useful in terms of the precision of the language, but are not very user-friendly for readability. Plain language is focused on the reader, so even complex issues are communicated in a simple way. So the point is not to dumb down or simplify the text. The point is to avoid complexity that is not really needed. Now, why we care about this? Because the main doctrine of the law is ignorance of the law is no excuse. Everybody needs to know the law, so the law needs to be accessible to normal people. This is just some example that was actually used in jury instruction. Jury members are lay people, but if you tell them something like failure of recollection is common, innocent, misrecollection is not uncommon, I don't think people will have easy time understanding. Maybe you also would need to read it twice to really get that it's all that it says is people often forget things or make mistakes in what they remember. So that's just to illustrate we can do things in a simpler or difficult way. Now, there have been a number of papers about legalese, just some examples of the phenomena that we may expect in legalese: archaic language, terms of art, so that's habeas corpus or hereinafter. These are things that you typically don't find in normal speech. Then we have then we have nominalizations, we have redundancy, we may observe long complex sentences. This is probably the one that you most commonly see in legal text and the one that adds considerable cognitive load. Passive voice, another one, and conditional clauses and embeddings. So I'm not going to go into detail. I think everybody you can think of an example of each of these. But what is interesting for me is why legalese exists and why it persists. And it's not a new phenomenon. This has been observed in ancient Rome, and it's still around, and it doesn't seem to be going away. The question is why? Well, many people feel that it increases precision of the text, which has been shown is not always the case. It often is, but not always. There's lots of inertia in terms of tradition. People are just used to their thought to write this in this way, and that's what they are used to. Also, it generates the aura of authority to the legal text. I don't think people are willing to pay a lot of money for a contract that sounds plain. That's one of the problems. But we believe that there is goodwill on the side of lawyers. That's what we need to believe for our efforts to be to bring some fruit over time. So we hope that the main obstacle is really the demands of the change. So essentially, people don't have good tools, and changing the way people do things is difficult. So we want to give them tools that will make it easier. So that's the whole concept. That's the motivation behind this. There have been a number of different articles and efforts, even laws that try to motivate people to use plain English, but it's difficult. There are manuals written, guidelines written. Everybody's trained on this, but it still doesn't seem to be working well. Again, probably people are just used to do things in a certain way. So what we are hoping to achieve is give them a tool that reduces this cognitive load and allows them to move to plain language, or at least remove the worst of the legalese in their writing. There have been a number of rule-based systems. One of them where we build on is developed here, Ponk, and we're hoping that LLMs can improve on that and maybe move us further towards the goal. So let me briefly say what we're hoping to achieve by incorporating LLMs. So rule-based system, obviously deterministic and explainable. If done well, they work really well. However, they require a certain level of linguistic expertise, lexical syntactic parsing, implementing rules in a software tool, extending is non-trivial. User cannot extend it. It needs to be done by the linguist or the coder. There are limits in rules where you cannot list all the possible words that are relevant for the rule. You cannot easily extend it as you would if you had human, for example, applying the rules. And yeah, this is probably just a technical limitation. So purely LLM-based systems, why don't we just ask LLMs, fix the legalese in this sentence? As Ondřej showed, LLMs are not really consistent in what they produce. So you would probably get something which varies hugely, which is fine if you just do it for yourself. But for any real application, that's simply not good enough. So what we are hoping is that a hybrid system where we have LLMs, but they're limited, instructed by rules, which are similar to what we have in the rule-based system, but not implemented in a software tool, simply formulated as you would towards a human. So that's the setup. You formulate it as you would instruct a human to apply those rules, but you use LLM. So this is going to be much more stable and explainable than purely LLM systems. You'll probably not need parsing, although it might be useful. And adding new rules would be relatively simple. All you need to do is formulate the rule and maybe do some testing. And then LLMs can also give you more. They can rewrite, they can remove the rule, and they can give you reasoning behind it. So the big question is, does it work? So this I will skip. Or maybe I will just point out the relevant parts. This was from a paper we started writing at a time based on the 35 rules we had from Ponk. They were of different type, morphology, lexicology, etc. Based on, we tested on specific corpus, specific data, and the workflow was simple. Give in the prompt instructions, basic instructions, give examples, rule definitions, sentences to annotate, and then specify what the output should look like in order to be able to process it. So it's basically a binary classification problem. You have a rule and you have a sentence, and you want to know if the rule is violated or not. You may want to have additional information, but this is the basis. And then, of course, you want to have a golden data set to evaluate against. Now, this I will skip. Basically, the findings from those experiments back then is that LLMs are able to be creative in the way that humans are. So they can they can extend the rule in a way as humans would. But the consistency was an issue. We were using at the time large prompts. So this is one of the hurdles you need to overcome, split it in reasonable chunks, but you still will not get 100% consistency. But this is one of the main objectives, to get prompts that achieve reasonable consistency. And of course, super important, quality of the rule definition matters. Any contradictions will just throw off LLM as they would humans. So what was the plan for the workshop? So this is all the background that I provided to them. And I said, well, in your context, how could we use this framework? So we aim to have 4 data sets because as I said, we had the legal text, which was the AI Act, and we wanted to analyze, hardcore legal text, but also they produce and translate lots of PR text for lay people. And these are very distinct. Obviously, the rules will be very different for the two. And we also thought it would be useful to have each of them split into the development and the evaluation data set so that we don't, we don't pollute the evaluation data set. It ended up to be a little bit more difficult to have 4 data sets. We ended up with just 2. Now, for the rules, we used, first of all, we got inspiration from the Ponk rules, but we also used How to Write Clearly guideline from EU. And basically, I asked the participants to select a rule and create definition and also build those data sets. That was the setup. And they were asked to manually apply those rules, which they created, to the texts in the AI Act and in the lay texts that we had in order to create manual annotations for those as first of all, the training dataset and for the evaluation dataset as well. So yeah, we were using the development datasets to build the prompt with instructions, examples, rule definition, text to analyze output. This was iteratively sent to LLMs, and all of this was recorded in Google Docs, and people were trying to improve on the prompt, basically. The best prompts at the end were then applied to the evaluation datasets, and I ran a script to evaluate it automatically, and they evaluated manually as they were building the dataset. Hope I made it clear. It was more difficult than I expected. So this is an example of the rules. So I will show you all 4 rules, but I will go over them very quickly. So we had avoid stack nominal compounds with ambiguous modifier scope. This is sort of the definition. This is the example. It's not clear what the extended refers to, whether the producer or the responsibility. So that's one of the things that they were interested in capturing. Then we had hard sentence length. This is obviously very trivial, but also turned out to be not that trivial. The definition had to be modified to include lists, and each element in the list was its own sentence. Then this was an interesting one. Obviously, it's difficult to avoid embedded subordinate clauses, and even second level subordinate clauses are needed. You probably cannot write complex legal text without them, but they should not be wrapped. So S1 should not start and then have S2 inside of it and then continue with S1. So this is something which people find very cognitively demanding. Also, it's something that you can avoid relatively easily. And then this is the verbs should, describing actions, verbs should be used, not nouns. So these were the 4 rules, and it turned out to be more difficult than we expected to build the proper prompt and even the data sets. So this is what we ended up with. For each of the rules, we had 18 or up to 36 sentences in total. Each of the groups contain also compliant and non-compliant examples, and the rest of the table is not really relevant at this point. So what were the results? I ran the evaluation, and it turned out that some of these were super useful. So you see we have the yellow one is GPT-5 and the blue and the white is GPT-4. And for example, for the sentence length, this was super interesting. GPT-4 was not able to understand that each item of the list should be considered its own sentence. So again, as Zdeněk said, the bigger the model, the better. Some of these results actually seem pretty useful. So for example, if you look at the no wrapped embedded subordinate clause, it was pretty good. 0.9 precision, recall 0.57. I think that was quite reasonable. So there is a lots of observations we had from here, and I don't want to go into them into much detail. For me, the main learning was that the initial plan was a bit too ambitious, so we ended up with having just a single data set for each group, which still was demanding enough to build anyway, especially looking for those rule violations is difficult because they are sparse. So yeah, and it was really cognitively demanding for the people. So I think that again proved the point that this system, if we can set it up correctly, could alleviate much of that cognitive load that's coming. And with that, my final point is we are actually developing this further into application. We hope to have it, the prototype ready this semester, and hopefully that will be something which will come out of our institute, also useful for people and for those who write legal texts. So with that, I'm done.
Yeah, thanks. So now I have just one more slide, and then we can go to questions if you have any. So the overall summary is that running a summer school for highly motivated fellows is inspiring because, as said, these were colleagues. Most of them were pure linguists, but there were also some kind of engineers in our field. So we have learned from them, and they have learned from us. It was really fellows on par, and it was inspiring for me for sure. I'm happy to hear the same thing, and now Tomáš is further developing the application. And I think that by organizing this, we have again strengthened the impression that UFAL is repeatedly and long-term making in the field. And I'm immensely grateful to you for the colleagues on this summer school, for the flexibility, for the travel hurdles that you've survived, and for the professional output that you delivered. So that was the organizational part. Thanks a lot. And for LLMs, I was always like avoiding using them, and I think that LLM can be actually our workmates in certain settings under three conditions, at least for me. So if you use them for bulk processing, where details are not so important, so tasks like pre-classification, pre-selection, prioritization, or filtering, this is something which can be sped up immensely. So this is very useful. You should not trust the outputs too much, because they always will vary across the different runs, even by the very same model, even on the very same hardware, because there is randomization built quite deeply into the settings. It also works better if the requests, if solving the task, can rely on similarity rather than some structured processing or even some kind of reasoning. So if there are similar examples in your data set from what similar to what you are asking, then you are likely to succeed. If you are asking for similarity between some parts of the input, again, you are likely to succeed. If you are asking for some structure output, this structure will crazily vary across different runs, and it's hard to make any conclusion from that structure. And multilingual requests were surprisingly easy for the models that we work with. Of course, this is the high resource languages. This is EU languages, and the EU has provided the world with the best multilingual data collection that we can think of. So the models definitely know that data set. But still, it's interesting that the languages don't matter much to the LLMs. So with that, I would like to thank the colleagues for co-organizing this, and you for the curiousness to come to this seminar.
Well, thank you very much. We still have a few minutes for discussion, but let me just add one remembrance or remark. We once were sitting with Ondřej downstairs for lunch, and Ondřej, I don't know, it's half a year ago, 1 year ago, and I will always remember his question, because he gave me a question saying, what can linguistics still bring to us, or to who specialize in LLM? And I mean, this is a question which is in my mind since then. I cannot find some decisive answer, perhaps decisive for Ondřej, but I must say that once I have listened to the talk today, I think they have the answer, don't they? I mean, the whole presentation here actually was about how linguistics can help or can inspire or can bring some insight, even if not solutions, but insight into the hard question. So thank you very much for your presentation. No, for instance, in discourse, I mean, annotation, we bother about the situation whether with the differences in annotation, how much of this is real, is an error. So when we spoke about errors here, how much of this is just, I don't know, oversight or something, and how much of this a real ambiguity. And I think this is an issue which somehow I thought I saw in your presentation, that this is an important difference, at least, and also for the interpretation, I should say so.
I would like to have one quick question regarding the the traveling part to the venue. It's very interesting. Like there was no option of having it hybrid or online in the complete worst case scenario. Yeah. Okay.
Not according to the agreement.
Oh, okay. So it's good to be careful about the agreements when you want to participate. Yeah. Because I think it's also like a running problem with ESLE, like what to do when some of the lecturers cannot arrive. I think there's an option to present online, and that was used like 2 years ago. And now they are trying to like enforce at least 2 lecturers to come to the summer school to get there.
So in our case, our agreement really didn't allow us to stay at home and run this remotely. And also it doesn't work for interactive sessions. So it was like 6 people and we actually didn't know which people would join which project. So the logistics to allocating people, even if then we ran like working groups online, the logistics would just fail. The time was too short for this. So yeah, we
Yeah, I agree. I think the issue was also with the confidential data that we were, once we arrived, they gave us access to lots of data. They wouldn't probably like just send us online if we would organize it hybridly. And yeah, we were able to manipulate with the data when we were right there on the premises.
So there was not, I forgot to plant a question. So I need to answer the question without being asked. So what is it? Is there something like global that you can learn from this? Yes. And I think I would like to cite the title of one of the Cheng papers we had. It was called The Joy of Parallelism. So I think the joy of multilingualism in the EU and the European Commission is underexploited. What you saw here were examples where the LLMs was automatically identifying diverging interpretations of the sentence. And I think that someone could pick this up as a topic, and you should revise the EU legislation and point out at these differences. And it could be done overnight if you run it in parallel using LLMs, and you will learn how much like the legal situation is complex and how people do not realize this complexity and how the different wordings lead to different conclusions. And I'm not so much concerned about the total like equality within the EU, but of course that would be the practical goal, that the courts would be ruling the same way across the countries. But I'm more interested in the divergence in meanings that we would see by doing this analysis. So this is an invitation for anyone to pick this up, and the LLMs can do that for you very easily. So just you need to manually verify when they are right and when they are wrong, and how to arrive at the most reliable analysis. So that's the answer to the non-given question. Okay.
To be honest, I'm not sure if you didn't answer that during the presentation, and I just wasn't paying attention. But for which I'm sorry in advance. My question would be: do you know like how did the actual translators and the people at the workshop took this, or if they said, "Oh, that's great, now we can use this," and did they actually, or do you have any feedback from them after the workshop?
We don't have, yeah.
This is useless.
No. We don't have the feedback from them so far, but this was, I think, the second or third instance of this summer school, and they kept mentioning the previous one. So for them, they take it as like maybe a little boost in their experience. They got to know some new tools, and they are regularly working with these tools. So we have simply helped them. It's not that we have developed something which would they use, which would then they use like every day from the September thing. But I think the plugin was probably something like you connected the LLMs to the Studio plugin in some more reliable way. So I think that even at this technical level, there were some useful immediate results. But definitely we have contributed to this set of tools they have when processing these volumes of text. So yeah, I don't feel bad about this in any particular way.